What's your first memory of Overton?
When I think of Overton, I think of a happy time, a very simple life. When I was little, life was very simple, and we had no electricity, no television, no radio. So as a very young girl, I still visualize going out in the field and thinking this is the whole world, because we had in the valley, so we had the mountains around us. I didn't know any other place existed.
So you made your own games, and
It was a world that it's unbelievable now because of television and everything. But at that time, it never occurred to me that there was anything beyond this little valley.
So that was a happy time.
It was a happy time.
Okay.
I would have to say simple but very happy.
Okay. Jim.
I concur. I think when I think of the Wappa Valley, I have to give credit to the Mormon people there that took us in. In 1925, when we moved there weren't no Japanese living there, so we were accepted, and through some hard work, we made a lot of friends, and many of them, they were hard times too, you know. So many of them extended credit to us just by word of mouth. Nothing's written. Says if you get a good crop in, you share it. Otherwise, it's the next crop that hopefully we all were trying to be good for the mercantiles and for us too. We were a big family. Some of the vivid memories I have is when I was old enough to carry a kerosene lantern. We had an irrigation company that we all bought shares in, or my folks, that is, bought shares in, and maybe the shares, well, you have from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's 2 hours time you try to irrigate and we had a row crop. And I remember Dad, long rows I had to stand at the end of the row. When the water reached the end, I was supposed to flag the lantern up and down, then we moved to the next one. And with the coyotes howling in the background, and I was probably some of the kids out there and is about the same age. I was barely able to hold a kerosene lantern. So those are things that I remember about being on the farm.
Okay. So Lily, who are the oldest relatives that you remember growing up there?
Okay, when I know that in our family we had 12, but I don't remember my oldest sister in Japan. I don't remember Saki because she was, by the time I was old enough to remember, she had already moved out. So my oldest person probably was Keel.
Okay, let's go even farther back. Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, even great-grandpa.
I remember my mom and my dad, but I don't remember only from photos and what my grandma and grandpa.
So what are your memories of Mom and Dad?
I remember my mother was not very tall, but I'm just, as I grew older, I had a much more greater appreciation of her, because I know that as a child, I used to hear stories that she was an only child and she was very sickly. And yet, I remember her as very strong and working on the farm every day. And I don't remember her wearing dresses, you know, always work clothes and working and always in control. So I remember her as a very, very strong woman.
Okay. How about Dad?
Dad was more quiet, and he worked hard, but I didn't have that much contact. You know, it's a big family, and I'm the younger one, so my most contacts was with my siblings rather than my parents.
Okay. How about you, Jim?
I think what she tells a mom is correct. She was a strong lady, small in stature, but she worked hard, and I think not by choice. It's a necessity. There were hard times, you know, and I remember Dad as being hi. Yes, yeah, hi. Yes, he was a yes man. And so Mom was
Yes
that.
to Mom?
Yeah,
Okay.
Mom was that strong.
Uh-huh.
She was an
And,
organized woman.
So I think that, but then you go a step further. If Mom, Dad was out in the field all the time, who then was in the home cooking for this large family? They're coming in from the field, hungry, and it was Bookie. And she mentioned, that's right, Masako moved out. She worked at the Overton Jones Hotel, I think they referred to it. And she moved out for some reason, and she very little time on the farm itself. So sorry to talk about Saki that way, but that's the way it was, you know.
So Mom kind of wore the pants.
Yeah, she was.
okay.
She was the number one.
So who did most of the discipline?
We didn't need to be disciplined.
Of course.
I don't remember having to be disciplined because ever since I remember, when we all had our jobs to do, and my memory goes back some before preschool, but mostly in school. We went to school, we come home, and Bookie would always have us organized. Everybody has their jobs to do.
Yeah,
Then
and we
after-
want to get into that kind of in detail here in a minute.
So
Like,
we didn't have to be disciplined.
But if who did you have to go to for permission to do something? Mom or Dad?
Kyo,
neither.
I think he because, you know, we don't have that language barrier, so you always go to him and say, you think we ought to do this, we ought to do that. So we always consulted him before going on to the parents. I think Kyo made a lot of decisions for you.
Okay, and why was that?
I feel I didn't have that much contact with Keel. Mine was mainly with Bookie. She was the mother.
Yeah, well, I think the ladies, because they had chores that had to be done within the household, you know. Whereas me, I was a gopher and everything else, and I think I antagonized Keel several times because I remember he pinned me down, and then I got on top of him. I was afraid to let go because I know what he's going to do next, you know. So those are the memories I have, yeah.
You know, it's kind of said of Japanese culture and maybe even Asian cultures that, you know, this idea of discipline is it's kind of an assumed thing. You know, you are expected to be obedient and to take responsibility and to work hard. And it wasn't like, you better do this or else, you know, it was just assumed. So was it that way then?
Well, I honestly don't ever remember having to ask permission to do it. Our life was pretty well spelled out. You come home from school, and we all had our jobs to do. Mine was usually to stay at home and help my sister Bookie. Then after that, they would bring the vegetables home, we'd work on it, then we'd do our homework. And, you know, we didn't have time for, I don't remember having any.
So one family member, one of the grandchildren, would like to know what those responsibilities were. Who did what of the children?
I remember, for the girls, we're kind of divided, you know. So I know Bookie, my old sister Bookie, she was the mama. And she did all the cooking and basically told me what to do. I was her gopher. She would tell me to go for this and go for that. And basically, what vivid in my mind is when she cooked, there were 10 of us. And we had 3 pork chops cooked with vegetables. You know, that was basically our menu, you know. And so she would do all that. But she basically told us, the girls, what to do. I don't know what the guys were doing. And Mitzi and Mary always had the job to go out in the field and work. And so she and I basically ran the house.
So Bookie was kind of the office manager.
She was the mama.
The mama, okay, okay. Jim.
And my mother was the CEO.
Okay, Jim, so what did the guys do?
Well, we all had our job on the farm, either irrigating or making sure that all the weeds are kept free, you know, and it's just a plowing, furrowing, disking.
So did all the boys kind of shared in all of that?
Yeah.
It wasn't like you did the plowing and somebody else did the irrigation. You pretty much took your turns?
Took your turn took your turn, you know, you're up next on the tractor, so you gotta spend a day on a tractor plowing or whatever.
Okay, I gotta ask, especially with a big family, and you know how families are these days, did you have a lot of, well, it's your turn to do this, I did it last time, or I did it twice, and now you should be doing it, or why do I have to always peel the potatoes? Did you have any of that?
No, I know we always had, I remember we would say, I'll wipe, I'll wash. You know, we just kind of took turns.
Kind of
and
volunteer.
It
Okay.
was not a conflict because, I don't know, we just did it.
Not a lot of drama, huh?
No,
Okay, great.
not for the girls. It just went, we just kind of did it. We knew it had to be done. We just did it.
Okay, gotta ask you, did you guys get into mischief?
No time.
No time, okay. How about even practical
I think,
jokes? Or,
April Fool's Day, we used to,
yeah, give us a
Jim
couple of
probably
those.
did. I had no time.
the men folks, they were just old enough to drive. April Fool's Day, we'll switch gate. Somebody will slap a gate on one short gate and long gate, and the big thing is to tip the outhouses.
Yeah, I remember that.
tip the outhouses, or we may swap neighbors' outhouses. You know, we had our share of fun. Yeah, and of course there was some discipline, but very little. I mean, it was all part of fun that we used to enjoy.
Okay, so obviously hardworking family, a lot of work to do working on a farm. So what did you do for fun, leisure? Not that you maybe had a lot of leisure time, but so what did you do for fun?
Well, what I remember when Mitzi was just 2 years older than me. So growing up, she was my best friend. So my memory of fun always involved her. So when we were little, very little, I remember she and I, we used to, we didn't have paper dolls or anything, so we used to cut out paper dolls out of Sears Roebuck catalog and put them in boxes. And we'd play house with them. Or my parents used to make root beer and we'd have these bottle caps. And we would collect those, and if it's a gold one, you know, one is a mama, one is, we used to, and we'd make mud dolls, play with them. And then we used to, for when we wanted to really have fun, we used to go and get, dig up worms, earthworms, and put them on a fish pole with a little stick, a rod, and we had a creek by our house. And then we'd go fishing out there. And then on the slide that was on the side, I remember we used to always slide down the slides. So we had fun. And then jump rope. We used to roll tires around. So, you know, we had our fun.
So what the guys do?
I think she spelled out pretty much. We made the most of whatever is available. You call fun, you know. Whereas it's a, you know, in those days we used to be able to drive cars around, mainly pickups, you know, old pickups, when you're 12, 13 years old, you know, and that's our fun. Is to later on we used to put noisy mufflers on them, Porter mufflers, and we used to see if we can run the town sheriff.
Did you?
Have fun like that.
Did you outrun him?
Some of them were souped up pretty good.
Oh yeah, we used to play horseshoes, and jump rope and horseshoes.
So kind of a lot of the toys you kind of made your own.
Yeah, we just
and
played.
made it.
No
Okay.
commercial toys, no.
Yeah. Okay. What did you do? What holidays? What were your holidays like?
Well, I remember my mother, even if she was here, she tried to adapt, and her English wasn't too good, but she did adapt American ways. So Easter, I remember we used to make the little paper baskets, and she used to hide them for us. Christmas, she'd get a tamarack tree and have a Christmas tree. We hung our stockings. Usually there's nothing in them except nuts or fruit, but something in it. So she tried to adapt our American ways.
So you celebrated most of the American holidays. Any Japanese holidays?
Shogatsu,
Okay.
New Year's.
Tell us about Shogatsu.
That's a big day. It'll lead up with Mochitsuki before. After the holiday, after Christmas, you generally look for a weekend when you're not on the picking vegetables. I mean, so you pound mochi and maybe involve any other Japanese family and even your neighbors. They come watch you make mochi. And so that probably is the biggest Japanese holiday. We didn't celebrate Boys' Day or Girls' Day like some areas do, but
The mom used to make manju once in a while.
yeah. Well, usually around Christmas time. Pardon?
Anybody lose a finger pounding mochi?
No, but you once in a while you get hit a little hard. My dad used to turn the mochi over, you know, and usually you're on the pounding end.
So did you have ofuro?
Oh, yeah, furo.
I have to tell you about birthdays, though.
okay.
That's
Good,
very,
good.
going back to the holidays, because that's very vivid in my mind. We try to celebrate birthdays. So if it's somebody's birthday, we raise chickens, so it's a little different. I know we used to go and catch a chicken, and then Mitzi and I, because she was much more robust than me, we'd catch it, and then I'd hold the legs, and she'd chop the head off, and the chicken would just jump around all over until it died, and then we feathered it, and then we'd make fried chicken, and then we'd have ice cream, and we'd have to go milk the cows. Roy would milk the cow, and we'd hunt the eggs from we had our own, and we'd have ice cream, and then we'd get ice and churn it. That was our birthday.
So everybody's birthday was...
Everybody's birthday, but that's what we did for birthdays. I mean, with none of this other stuff.
Yeah, okay. You celebrated, obviously, some Christian holidays, Easter, Christmas. What was the religious background in the family?
I think parents are Buddhists, you know, they're in the Buddhist bringing. They belong to Koyasan in LA. But I think after that generation, I don't think there was any special religion. When you go in the service, you're asked if you're a Protestant or something like that. But other than that, I don't think there's any. Later on, I think they took to the Mormon religion, but initially we were not. Although we respected all the religions, those who had religious.
Did the parents use Buddhist teachings or principles that you remember? Or did they?
At least I don't recall them having any. I think, for the most part, in the valley there were no other Japanese. You know, there were very few Caucasian that even knew about Buddhist religion. You know, so our folks really didn't practice Buddhist religion. Maybe they practiced it, but they didn't have any temples to go to or anything like that. So,
Okay.
and they were poor people. We were all poor people, so we had to keep busy as a family, you know.
I remember when I was really little, I didn't know about Mormon, but my friends were Mormons. And I was always kind of envious because I didn't know what they were doing on Sundays, and Tuesdays they went somewhere and I didn't go, and Sundays they went somewhere. So I remember when I was really young, in elementary, I used to always be envious. I didn't know what was happening, but I know that they had something that I didn't have. So that was always in the back of my mind.
Okay. I've become kind of a foodie in my latter years here. What were the favorite dishes that, and where did the recipes come from for the meals that you ate?
Well, our day-to-day meals were not anything special. We always ate the same thing every day.
What was your favorite?
Favorite? Ice cream.
Now, favorite, detest sitting down and saying napan salmon.
Yeah, we had Napan salmon
Salmon.
egg.
You know, you get big, tall kind of salmon. Of course, you raise napa. I guess maybe,
We had canned salmon and Napa.
yeah, canned salmon napa. It was constantly there in front of us. So,
But mom and dad liked it, I guess.
Well,
well,
it wasn't whether you like. We were surviving. And
Yeah.
salmon, canned salmon, you can get. When we cooked, when Bookie cooked, she had no choice. We had vegetables in the farm. We had canned salmon, or we could sometimes have pork chops, or chicken, you know. But it's not like our days where we have a choice. There was no choice. That's what we did, and we didn't.
we survived.
Oh, my mother used to make, I have to tell about, I saw in the paper the other day and how in Japan there's a thing with a rice pot and making those pancakes. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
My mother used to, remember she used to make that botera?
Yeah, botera.
Botera, we called it. And because we were too poor to get bread or something, but she invented that botera. She'd make pancakes that was real thick like this, and then we cut it in triangles like this, and we put jam in it, and that's what we took for lunch. I saw that the other day. I said, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
what,
I just saw that the other day too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that my mother knew about that many years ago."
She should have submitted the.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was school like?
Well, my school, I remember for me, it was a very small school, Logandale School I went to. And I can remember the names of, you know, there was Raymond and Riley Jensen, Kay Adams, Kay Pulsifer, Lois Frainer, and Floyd Frainer, and that was it. And Eileen, she moved away. And I guess there were only 2 of us girls and about 8, and it was a small school. And then when we got out of 8th grade, then we went to Overton, and it was a bigger school. But.
Did you enjoy school? And maybe an unfair question, but how did you do in school? Were you good students because of your work ethic?
I think we were good students.
Did you enjoy school?
I guess so. We didn't stop to think about it. We just went, and
Something you had to do?
you just did it.
Yeah.
And until later, I didn't realize there's no other girls except one other girl. But I don't remember. You know, we just did it. High school, I enjoyed. Elementary, I don't know.
Okay. Jim?
Well, I remember because of my name was Junwo, you started out 1st grade as Junwo. By the 3rd grade, as teacher, we had Clara Bean. I can remember her because I can still remember seeing her with a yardstick, and she started calling me Junior. Then she gave me the name Jimmy. Sit down. But we had those days that I feel kind of made our lives, those schooling, and because of the teachers we had, maybe there were a dozen in a class, and so the teachers had chance to spend a lot of time with us. I see some of the teachers, my daughters are teachers, and they struggle with the kids of 30, 40 in the class. I said, how can anyone teach with that many people, you know? But we got through. Because of the war, World War II, I wasn't able to go on to school. We finished high school and waited around to be drafted. And later on, after the war, on the GI Bill, I thought, well, maybe I'll give higher learning a chance. But by then, you know, you had so much competition, and you have youngsters trying to be in, you're already 4 years beyond them. So I went to trade school, and about that time, uh, television was coming along, so I was able to get into radio electronic, soon television. It was in my schooling, and then I went into repairing and sales and service of television, later on appliances. Yeah.
I feel that elementary was very small. The high school was wonderful because we had small classes of 25, so we were able to do anything. Like I was able to edit the paper and have a lot of opportunities. And I myself feel very, very fortunate because in a big family of 10 or 12, I'm sure everybody wanted to go to college, but they had to work on the farm. But Mitzi was my friend and also my guardian angel. She just kind of took care of me. And so when she was still in after high school during the war, she was very talented. She's artistic, so she taught high school. And so she looked after me when I was in high school. And when I got into graduate, I didn't know anything about college or anything, but she would always make sure that I got signed up to be officers and whatever. And then so when we got in high school, she decided that I should go to BYU. I didn't know what BYU was, but she told me that I was going to go there, and I went there. And she paid for she was working, so she paid for my board and room, and I just feel so fortunate. So from there, once you start, you finish. Then I finished, and after 1 year, I went to LA, Cal State LA, finished and became a teacher, and I taught for 32 years. But if I hadn't had that start from her, I don't know what I'd have done, because I wasn't too assertive person. She kind of guided me where I should be, so I'm always grateful to her.
What about being Japanese growing up?
Living in the valley, we were fortunate, and you stood out, and everybody was looking at you. So if you excel, then the whole Japanese community would look upon as being a real good students, farmers, or whatever, you know. But I can't speak for those who lived on the West Coast in Japanese colony too. So
I didn't feel any different, and I know my friends. I know our home life was a little different because I didn't invite my friends over. We didn't do much back and forth. But when I got in high school, I had some very good friends, and Roma Jean Shurliff and Dorothy Shurliff, and they would invite me to their home, and I got to really see what American homes were like. And I used to sleep over, and the parents were always so nice. So I didn't feel different as Japanese. I felt maybe a little different because when I was little, because had to work all the time, but I didn't feel different as Japanese.
Okay, you know, we've talked about you know, the tough times growing up there in Overton, and a bit of the culture, a lot of Mormon culture, and then specifically with your family, when you look back now, you realize, you know, we were kind of poor.
We didn't know it, but we were poor.
Yeah, and maybe discuss a little bit, contrast that with kind of being poor today, and how you you know, dealt with it then versus how maybe you would do it today?
Well, I think it's just so different because we lived on a farm, and we were very poor, but we lived on a farm. And in our standards today, we ate very healthfully. We had nothing but fresh vegetables and very little meat, and so we were healthy. I never remember going to a doctor. But poor people today is a little different because most of them don't live on a farm, and most of them don't eat very healthy. So, it's just different.
So being on a farm, you're kind of self-sufficient, right?
Yes,
for,
you
for
did
the
have everything.
necessities, food,
Yeah, you
shelter.
had all the basics.
Yeah.
You got your exercise and everything, and it was just different. I think it'd be hard to be poor now.
Okay, so now we've kind of gone from early childhood and growing up, elementary school, maybe a little bit. Is there anything else in high school that you wanted to discuss? Your high school
It was
days.
happy time.
Happy time.
Happy time.
Been able to do things.
There was one question that I had, and that involves, now I'm an only child, so I kind of don't relate, but because so many siblings. But George is the baby. Okay, so my question is, was he spoiled in any way? Did he get maybe a little more privileges that you guys didn't growing up? And, that type of thing.
He had a horse. Nig is a creepy horse, and he had a bicycle that we didn't have.
So did you guys pick on him at any time? Usually the baby gets kind of picked on every once in a while.
Well, you
Really
and
would
George
know.
are 12 years. How many years apart are you?
I don't recall the years that I would have been able to pick on him. I wasn't around on the farm anyway, so probably Lily could probably tell you whether she bossed him around. Yeah.
George was, he's 7 years younger than me. George and Georgiana are best friends. They're just 1 year apart. So he just kind of grew up separately, and rest of us were bunched together, but he was quite a bit younger. And I don't know.
Okay.
By then,
remember too
he
much
was able to. Education meant more then, when he was growing up, than we were. We were just surviving as farmers, and I recall you going to Future Farmers of America, FFA, and you took shop and ag, which made up most of your school curriculars, except maybe a little English and a little history, and math, naturally. That's the extent of it. But we used to look for those ag because they were the times where we could slough off being in a shop or something like that, yeah.
I think maybe in retrospect, the younger one, I'm more on the younger end, and we were lucky because they were, like I said, I had a sister looking after me, making sure I got my education. And George, being the youngest, I think he focused more on education. I don't think he's that much smarter than us, but he was a good student, and he became a good engineer, and he was very bright, but I think maybe the focus was there. And I clearly remember my mother died when he was just 16. And I remember I was already working. I was in LA, I was 22 or 23. And I remember going home. This was very touching to me, so I have to share this. When I went home during the summer, I cleaned out my mother's things and everything. And I was really touched because I looked at this trunk, and here were these silver dollars. She had saved all the silver dollars for George to have a typewriter. So I remember I was already working, but I took that money and I went to LA and went up and down the street. I bought a typewriter. I don't know if he remembers I bought this typewriter that my mother had. So because she wanted him to have a typewriter, must mean that she was focusing more on his education, and therefore I think he was, I'm not saying he did better than us, but he was able to do better than, and I was lucky too, because I got to go to school and I got to become a teacher. Others would have, I know Keel was extremely bright. He wanted to go to school. He couldn't go to school. So and some of the older ones, I know Bookie wanted to become a nurse and she couldn't do it. So George and I were lucky. But I think because my mother focused on her, I guess she was saving for a typewriter, that he must have sensed it, and I think he did very well in high school and in chemistry and whatever. So there's a little, I think the oldest were really smart, but they were just surviving. You know, their idea was not to go to school. The idea was to help perpetuate the family. So.
Okay, so this is a good segue into now life beyond high school, but I'm going to take one step backward, or not necessarily backward, but when Mom died, okay, how did you and how did family respond? Was that a real sad time?
Well, because we were a big family, it was our first death. For me personally, it was terrible. It was, I was already in LA, I was working, but, it was a hard time.
So was that death unexpected?
Yeah, she had a stroke.
Oh, okay.
She was only 58.
So, okay.
So,
so all of a sudden she's gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was for me anyway.
Yeah. How about you, Jim?
Well, I got called that Mom was in the hospital, and in those days you went by train, so I took a train into the hospital and.
And where was this? Vegas?
In Vegas, Charleston Hospital, whatever. Anyway, I heard her kind of gasp her last breath, So that's what I have memories of her.
How did you feel at that time?
Well, she was only 58. It's anybody today, 58, to have them die, I felt, and George is the only one at home, he felt that because Mom wasn't getting them, she was diabetic, and I think she had over-insulin, went into insulin shock, and I think if I remember correctly, they tried to revive her by giving her orange juice, something like that, to counteract it. But she got so bad she had to go to the hospital. And that's when I got to see her.
How did the rest of the family respond that you remember? And especially maybe Dad?
I think we were all in shock. And I think it was especially harder. Well, now that I'm much older and I've lived, I understand. I remember Mrs. Milshi and some of this saying, for George, Roy, and I, it was the hardest because we were still single. Everyone else had a family, but the first death is always the hardest. I'd like to share one thing, though, before it comes to my mind, because to me it's very important. When we lived in Overton, in Nevada, I don't think any of us felt prejudice. You know, we didn't feel prejudice. In 1948, after I went 1 year in BYU, and I didn't feel anything there. That was great. But when I came to LA, it was 1948, 49, I went to BYU. I remember I just couldn't believe it because, you know, there was a lot of prejudice here. And when I went into counseling at LACC, they said, I wanted to go into teaching. They said, you never become a teacher because they don't hire Japanese. This is the first time they don't hire Asians or Japanese. So I don't know why it is, but in a community like Overton or even in Utah, BYU or something, you don't feel the prejudice. But in a big community where there's lots of Asians, you feel it. That was the first time I felt that there was, you know, prejudice against us. And I didn't understand it because of, you know, so that I think is a difference between a big city and small community.
Now, Jim, when you were in high school, you were student body president, okay? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I think it's student body president is a kind of a popularity thing, you know. The student
You were popular, huh?
Yeah. No. Well, I don't think they merit you on your grades or anything like that, but it really was how well your fellow students plus your teachers, and it was really a popularity. It comes to,
He was
but,
popular. Did
yeah.
you hear him?
So was that a good experience for you?
Well, yeah, I always look back on those years as
What year was that?
well. I graduated in '42, so from '38 on, I was in high school, and I think junior year I was a class president, then senior I was a student body president.
So the war didn't have much of effect on
Well,
that then.
You see, we were slated to graduate in May of '42, so the middle of the last year, war started, and I would say, like Leo says, with exception of bullies, you have bullies all the time. You never had anyone be prejudiced because you're Japanese. And I can remember, and I keep repeating, I don't know whether it was a Mormon friends I had, but even after the war started, they all came to you, always assuring them that they're your friends, they're not going to turn in. In fact, I don't know if you know, Overton is within the 600-mile coastline distance that the 6th Army Command, or wherever that 4th Army Command was supposedly relocating all the people. And the story goes that the townspeople had a meeting and said that the Yamashita Ishimotos will be responsible, and they convinced the generals who were intending to evacuate us that we were not detrimental to the war effort.
Great. So now we're going to graduate from high school. what kind of went through your minds, and if you can recall the minds of siblings? Okay, now we're out of high school. Were there thoughts, well, I want to continue being a farmer, I want to continue the farm, no way I want to be a farmer, I want a different life? Can you explain some of that?
Well, I have to go back to that. I think I was not too intense person. I was probably pretty passive. And I had a sister that kind of controlled my life. And Mitzi decided that I'm going to go to college, and that started me on. So once you start there, then you get I never even thought about what I was going to do, but you just kind of roll with it and decided to be a teacher.
Okay, so what was the mindset of most of the kids?
After the war?
After the war, yeah, and beyond high school.
You mean in our family?
Yeah, in your family, yeah.
I think everybody did what they had to do. I mean, some got married, some.
Okay.
I don't know.
Jim?
Well, I think farming took pretty high priority during the war years. And I think anybody that lived on a farm felt that they had a job to do. It's supplying food for America. And there was no shame of being left on a farm. In fact, my older brother, Kyoshi, your senior, but he remained on the farm all during the war years, and after the war, he took his turn at being in the service. But I think there was no shame in being a farmer.
Okay. So we're now beyond high school, maybe even beyond college. Tell us about your families and your family life, and maybe how it was influenced by what you learned and your experience in Overton growing up.
I mean, when you raise your own family, you mean?
Yes, your own families now. And your spouses, okay, obviously they didn't grow up in Overton. They had an entirely different experience. Well, maybe not entirely different, but a different experience growing up. How did that mix? This is the last question for tonight.
how did living in Overton influence the way you raised your family? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're kind of asking this question that, now you grew up, you learned a lot of things in Overton, influenced by a lot of things. The culture there, the people there, the friends, influenced by work on the farm, working with siblings for common goal, this type of thing. Now you've moved on, you are now married, okay? Now your spouse is from a different, experience, life experience than yours. How do you feel that the influence of being a Yamashita influenced your role now as a mom and as a dad?
Well, I think because we came from a large family, because we didn't have too many outside, we were basically a family. That I think, for me personally, I just see the value of family, your children, and extended family. It's been very, very important to me to keep up with my siblings. It's still important to me. And I think because we were a family, and we didn't have a whole lot of other that might have had influence. I don't know. But family is important.
Okay. Jim, this
Well,
is the last question.
Yeah. My wife came from Irvine, which is my family. Were on an Irvine ranch until the alien land forced us off. But she had somewhat the same upbringing as I did, so we knew what our challenges were, and we made the most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That
Oh, thank you.
closes up this session.
Yeah. Wow.
This evening, we're going to be interviewing Jim Yamashita and also Mark, his nephew. We wanted to especially focus on the war years. And of course, Jim, you served our country very faithfully, and Mark, your father, did as well. And for posterity's sake, we wanted to learn about a lot more detail about those years. Having served in the United States Air Force for 20 years and retiring as an officer, I have the utmost respect for all military personnel. And I get a little bit choked up at times, and I have very special feelings about those who were willing to just put their lives on the line to serve our country. And certainly, the Yamashita family can be proud that not only you, Jim, Shig, we know Keo served, but there's a great legacy for the Yamashita family to appreciate. And that's why you're here, because we want to get more of the details specifically about how you, Jim, and your father, Shig, contributed to this great land of America that we live in. What I'd like to do this evening then is kind of take it in chronologic order. When your father, when you, Jim, joined the service, how that came about, when, and what that experience was like. And then we'll just kind of move forward from there to the time that you returned home once again. Okay, the format will be that, Jim, I'll be asking primarily you most of the questions, but Mark, as they pertain to your dad, just jump right in at any time. And then I think Jim may even have some questions that he might have for you as well, okay?
I'll do the best I can.
Yeah, okay. So, Jim, how did it come about that you joined the United States Army?
First, John, I think it's all right to keep calling me Jim, but you might find some researchers that will look for Jim Yamashita. Jim Yamashita. There is no Jim Yamashita serving in the Army. So I was Junwo, Junwo, serial number 399151179. To clarify that, you can continue to call me Jimmy, okay?
Yeah, and tell us then how you became Jimmy.
Jimmy came early in my grammar school year because teachers have a hard time saying Junwo. They all can say junior, but knowing my dad was Turukichi, certainly I would not be a junior. So I think I go back to third grade teacher. I use the first name now because her name was Clara Bean. Anyway, Mrs. Bean said, Junior, hey, that's hard to pronounce. Let's call you Jimmy. Okay, Jimmy, get in the back there. That's how I got introduced, only she had a ruler in her hand there. But since then, I was known as Jimmy. I doubt very much whether by the time I got to high school, anybody would have known there was a Jumo that graduated from my Valley High School. In fact, all my diplomas said Jimmy. So that's the story how I became a Jimmy.
So most of your legal paperwork, was it Jim then, from then on, or?
No way.
Stayed Jumo?
Everything was Jumo. Even
Okay.
my driver's license, and it's Jumo, Jimmy, parentheses, Yamashita. Yeah.
So what year did you join the Army, and how did that come about?
You almost said Air Force. We weren't allowed in the Air Force when we were going in. I graduated in May of 42. You know what December 7th, 41 brought to. So naturally, all the boys or my classmates said, hey, I'm going to join up. Grant goes to Navy, somebody's in the Marines, another guy's going in the Army. Says, hey, Jimmy, when you're coming in? I didn't tell him I was a 4C, enemy alien. The draft board had classified all Japanese American living in America 4C. In fact, some that had already been serving were removed from the service, although Shig was not. Shig was drafted in 1940 and was in Port Louis, Washington, the time the war started. So, but going back to, so it wasn't until almost a year later, in February of 43, that the draft was opened back up to the Japanese American, pleading by Japanese American leaders, and Hawaii had Hung Wai Chin, and he was very instrumental in getting the boys signed up to become American soldiers. So the first group of soldiers were from Hawaii. They came over in March of 43, and I joined them about a month or two later.
Okay, so you volunteered then. You weren't drafted,
Well,
or you?
there's a question. You know, when you're registered with the draft, you volunteer to stay out, then you're a draft dodger. But so technically, we were drafted. You know, we all had registration. We registered with the draft as we turned 18, and we were called. So when the Japanese American were allowed to go into the service, those of us who were registered were drafted, period.
Okay, did you have any reservation or reluctance to do that?
Not really. Our parents felt that we belonged in the service. In fact, they prided themselves having stars in the window, and I was not put through a lot of the prejudice on the West Coast. So I was not, my parents weren't in the camp and like that, so there's no reason why I would have felt that I didn't belong in the service. Yeah.
Okay, for the younger generations now, the star in the window indicated what?
Service, somebody in the service.
Okay, somebody in the armed services.
Armed services.
Okay. Mark, do you know how your dad came to join the Army?
Well, I know that after he returned from Japan, he spent a couple of years in Overton at the farm. He attended the high school to get a to graduate from high school from an American high school.
How old was he then?
Oh, gee. Let's see. I think he came back in, was it 1936?
So was he beyond high school graduation
Yeah,
age?
I think he graduated high school in Japan.
Japan, and
then he returned.
Okay.
And when he came to America, then of course he had to go to high school so that he could get his diploma. So he went to Moapa Valley High School, I guess it is, and he graduated. And during those years, then of course he became acquainted with his brothers and sisters who he was not raised with. And I think at a certain point in time, he decided to go to Los Angeles, I believe, on his own to look for work, I guess, probably around 1940 or something like that. And he was drafted at that time.
Oh, he was drafted. Okay.
He was drafted, yes. And as Uncle Jimmy said, that he was already in the service when the war broke out. And I believe that it was November 1941, before the war, that the Military Intelligence Service decided that they were going to, everybody knew the war with Japan and Germany was imminent. It was going to happen at some point in time. It had to happen. We had the Germans were, threatening England, and Japan was, wreaking havoc on Asia. So the United States had to step in at some point in time. So they began the first military intelligence school class for Japanese interpreters with the intelligence service. And I think that was November 1941.
41.
Yeah, and they opened up a school at the Presidio in San Francisco, which is, I guess, was an Army base up there. And my father, they interviewed a lot of the people that were in the Army, and my father was selected as one of the members of the first class of the Army.
Okay. At the outbreak of the war, well, with Pearl Harbor happening, your dad's already in the Army. Did he talk about any kind of ill feeling or prejudice against him at that time?
I think everybody that knows my dad knows that he was very quiet, never spoke a lot. So even with us, he never talked too much about it. And I know a lot of the war experience, since he was in the intelligence service, they were sworn to secrecy. They were told at the end of the war that you don't talk about what you did with anybody. It was confidential. And so he never really did talk about it a lot until in his later years, after the redress and those kinds of things began to open up, and people began to talk about their experiences. And when I was a kid, he'd tell me some stories, but I really wish I had spent more time and I had pushed him to tell me more stories. So.
Okay. So now, you're in the Army now. Where did you go for basic training and all of that? And then tell us a little bit about the comrades that you had. Obviously, you're in a Japanese unit, so most of your immediate comrades are Japanese, kind of in the same boat. But maybe tell us about your other, maybe Caucasian or even black fellow, soldiers, officers, and how did that go?
Well, we were a segregated unit, segregated to the point where we did not have any blacks. They had their own units, and we were Japanese American units with the exception of Caucasian white officers. Because
Were there any Japanese officers at that time?
there were a few doctors, dentists, and a few others that had been to ROTC, were allowed to graduate. I doubt very much whether any of them came up through officers training, which is Fort Benning, Georgia, you know. As it was, I think because of the Caucasian officers, in a way we were respected as they are officers. You respect your officers. With a few officers that washed out early, I think it was a good blessing because those who trained us had so much respect for us that when they went to the front line, they were continuing to be our leader. In other words, they didn't fall on the back and say, "Hey, I'm safer back here." They led the way. So those officers that trained us and stayed with us became what we were today, what we were then, you know.
Why do you think they had that much respect for you guys?
I don't know. I think Japanese, as a rule, were well disciplined because of our bringing up, and I think that was the Japanese Americans were groomed from their childhood to respect the elders and
Respect authority, yeah.
respect authority, yeah. So I think that was the main reason.
Okay. Did your dad, do you think, had kind of the same experience that you know of?
I would think that I know that when they first started with the school, there was a lot of skepticism on the part of many Americans and the people in the Army, and because they were considered the enemy. They're still Japanese nonetheless, and my father in particular, since he was educated in Japan, his command of the English language was not that good. Even as an adult, he had a distinguishable Japanese accent, and I would think that the Nisei Americans who were like Uncle Jimmy, they were raised here and they spoke perfect English, but they knew the Japanese language to a certain degree. They probably had an easier time. I would think my father might have been more suspect, and I'm sure my father might have had a certain amount of, he was raised over there. He always wanted to come back to America, but still, that's where he was. He probably knew. The fact is, he probably knew a lot of these guys that he might have been fighting against. And when it comes down to it, people that he might have gone to school with, who knows?
Do you know if there was any kind of, a little bit of loyalty to Japan since he had really grown up there? And
I don't think so. I think that my understanding is that he always wanted to come back because he knew his grandfather told him that you're an American, and that you have your papers and everything like that, and that you can go back to America at some point in time. But I think the fact that they had the Great Depression going on, and plus 10 kids that they were trying to raise on a little dirt farm, they just didn't have the money. And I know my father would send letters home asking, "Please, I want to come home, please." And I guess they could never do it. And I think that, but he wanted to be an American. He felt he was American. He wanted to come back home. So I'm sure that when he came home and met his family and his parents and everything like that, that it was a great, blessing to him. So.
Did he ever talk about a concern about, him fighting on the American side? And like you said, there may be friends, relatives that.
No,
that'd be tough.
Yeah, we never. I don't think we ever got into that deeply.
Okay.
And I'm sure there has to be some kind of some feelings, but he never spoke about them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, where did you do your basic training, and what was that experience like?
We trained in Camp Shelby, Mississippi, which was about 60 miles south of Jackson, which is capital of Mississippi. I got to tell you a little bit about most of the mainland guys came in a month or two after the Hawaii guys were there. I keep saying Hawaii guys, that's the way they talk too. So, but because of this, we had to train separately. And there was some, here again, animosity between the first cadre, not the officers now, the cadres were made up of mainland guys. And cadre had to give the same command as the leaders did. So there was quite a bit of friction between these Hawaii guys came in having to receive commands from fluent English-speaking Niseis, you know. So, but here again, after we trained with them a while, and especially after we gone overseas, we all become brothers in arms. So I had to relate this because it was a very important part of our training to have that differences and have heal that differences before we're going overseas.
How well do you feel they prepared you for war, to do what you had to do?
Well, I think we were prepared. I speak for myself because we were what we call original. We trained and went maneuvers with the Hawaii guys, and we trained as a unit. I can't speak for the replacement that came along that replaced the guys who got killed. They may have some different feelings, but because we trained as a family, we were looking out for each other. So I think it was very instrumental in how the whole unit performed.
They trained you, obviously, you know, how to use your weapons and this type of thing. How did they prepare you, let's say, mentally or psychologically, emotionally, or did they, or was it just, this is what you got to do and we're going to go do it?
I don't know if we really got much training other than just before going overseas. They went out of their way, the Army did, to have us guard German prisoners. Well, there were German prisoners early in the war. They were the big 6-footers, and they were the best of the German Army, and they were working the plantation farms in Georgia, and we were down there gardening, so as to impress on us that, hey, we got some big guys, Huns that we got to fight against. So I don't know. It just turned out to be that feeling in my mind that why should we go down there and out of our way to guard German prisoners when we're going to be fighting the Germans? But I think it was to condition us to physically, that's what we're going to be up against. It's my feeling.
Did it help? At the end of it, yeah.
I don't see anybody doing a judo on them, so I think it did condition us that German soldiers were big and brawny, you know, and we're little small runts.
Did that worry you at all? I mean, you know, I've played a lot of sports, and you know, you go play another team, and if they're a whole lot bigger than you are, you know, that kind of gains your respect right off the bat. Did that have any effect on you guys?
Never come to mind.
Okay.
Not in my mind, anyway.
Great.
You know, even though I'm a small guy, I have the same weapons, not as sophisticated as their weapon, but we had the same ability to kill each other as they did it to us.
So you felt your group was relatively confident in what you could do, and you were ready to do what you had to do then.
For us, 100th Battalion was forerunners of the 442nd, and because they were given assignments in war that they overcame and were considered, by the time we got there, they were kind of the shock troop. I think it gave us a confidence that we needed to, as a green unit going in.
Because they had done so well.
Yes,
and
yes, that's
yeah.
exactly.
Okay, great. Did you have some free time during basic training? Were you able to take any leave, or at least a weekend pass, this type of thing?
Well, those who were able to, first one, naturally the local, New Orleans was the biggest attraction for most of the guys. Then from there on, they all want to go up to the big city, New York City. But for us mainlanders, we all want to get home. You know, with the Hawaii guys, they have no chance of. There's before the airplanes. There's no chance of getting home, so they're looking for places where they can visit, that they can talk about, have read about.
So if you left the base on a weekend pass or whatever, at that time, again, feelings in the country, I'm pretty sure, were fairly raw. Did you experience any discrimination where you were there in the South, being Japanese?
I don't know. I've never had to experience having to drink from a different fountain labeled black, white. Just don't make a mistake and start drinking from the black fountain because they'll say, hey, that's for the black people. You drink over here with the white people. So, and you take we're standing up in the back end of the buses, empty seats. And we're standing in the aisles, trying to hang on something. So if somebody makes a mistake of sitting in the back seat, hey, get out of there, that's for the black people. That's the experience we had, you know.
Okay. Now, during the war, you had support, obviously, from family, friends, community. Could you maybe just briefly let us know kind of what kind of support you felt you had from the Yamashita family, but maybe friends back in Moapa Valley, and maybe community? Did they support you guys?
Oh yes, I felt the girls that was left in the valley, not only our sisters, the Caucasian girls that we graduated with, they were equally proud that they were able to write to you. They written, and I had community leaders way up in the LDS church. They used to write and tell us how proud they were of having my serve their country, you know, along with their sons at that time there were no daughters in the service, so I can't say sons and daughters. I wouldn't say there were a few ladies, wax and the auxiliary nurses and stuff like that. So I don't want to get caught saying that, oh, there weren't any girls supporting them.
So you felt a lot of good support from home. Did that help?
Oh yeah, well, you pick up a mail, when there's only 2 Japanese in the family, you weren't expecting the other Japanese families to write to you. You were expecting your classmate to write to you. So naturally, it made you feel that they were behind you, to know that you were there and on their behalf.
So now, basic training's over. You're shipping out. Everything now has been kind of for pretend, so to speak. Did you really have an idea what you were going into as you hopped on the ship to go to Europe? What were your feelings then, and maybe the feelings of the group as a whole, your comrades?
For myself, I was not assigned any particular duty until I got overseas, because I was, for the first 4 or 5 months, I was what they call a company runner. And because we came in late, the squad leaders, the platoon sergeants were all selected. Then they had to put you wherever you fit. Well, company runners, anybody could be a company runner, subject to this. Subject to company runner is a messenger boy from the, just as it sounds, from your platoon runner to your company commander. So if you say you move up, most of the time you move, at least for us, we moved out early morning. If you were going to attack at 6 o'clock, we start moving, because we were foot soldiers. We had to walk to our enemy. So that means that we had to, company runners used to bed down where the company command is, and we'd have to run to our platoon sergeant. We're going to move out in 0400. In other words, half an hour we're going to be moving, so get your men up and moving. And our position was, our duty was to take that message back to that, to know, even though they are aware what time we're going to move out, we had to practically wake them up, because you didn't want a 4th platoon to be all asleep because the company sergeant wasn't awake to wake the men up. Well, my job was to wake the company, not the company, but the platoon sergeant up, wake him up so he can wake up his squad. It's a chain of commands, So the platoon runner had that position. And I don't know if that answered your question.
Was there any sense of fear, worry? Am I gonna go back to Moapa Valley? Are my friends gonna go back to their homes? Family, friends.
Well, you always have that fear, you know, when you say, well, they say, Kendall got it last night. Kendall got killed, in other words. Or they say, well, he went back on a stretcher. They know little conversation here and there. We try not to elaborate too much on how. We just said, say, well, somebody got hit. And so if you didn't fear death or injury, something like that, you'd be kidding yourself, because everybody had that fear, yeah.
Okay. Was there a sense of patriotism or yeah, how did you feel about that? Here you are representing and protecting your country. Was that part of the equation at that time?
I don't believe so. I think when it came down to it, you became a fighting family, and I was with I Company, so, and I was with 4th Platoon, so we all tried to see if at a company level, oh, we got 2nd Platoon on the right-hand side, so don't worry. Or maybe I had one of my platoon guys was an ammo sergeant, something like that, you know. So that's the type of thing. You had to do a job, and that gave the utmost in you. You felt that you had to. That's why in our unit you found very little cases of AWOL, because each job was important to that person, and whether it be because we felt that somebody was on the right, 2nd Platoon was on the right, and we felt assured because it was our family. We knew what our 2nd Platoon could do, you know.
So you're focused on the immediacy of the moment, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
yeah.
You never thought of who the president was or who your senator was or anything like
Sure.
that.
But did you have a sense that what you were doing, though, was going to help keep America free and not let Germany or whoever else, you know, invade America?
Well, we had the overall picture
Sure.
of why we were there.
What, in general, what was the feeling toward the enemy, toward the Germans, and did you fight Italians at that time?
I think the 100 did, but by the time we got into the thing, the only action we saw Mussolini hung up. That's the only, which is the supreme commander of the Italian army. So they can tell you what the extent that we had with Italian.
Okay. So there wasn't any unusual, maybe, animosity. It's you've got a job to do, and they've got a job to do, and
I don't have any stories I can relate to that. I'm not a Danny Noy or anybody that had chance to speak out and say things that I question whether it all took place or not. But we all had a job to do, and we felt like if we failed to do the job, somebody else is going to be paying for it. So.
okay. So Mark, just mentioned. So how did the 100th come about, and then how did the 442 come about, and then how did you become part of the 442?
I think the Hawaii was attacked, and I think the commanders of the Hawaii had they didn't know what to do with these soldiers in Hawaii, so they were I guess they call them National Guard. So they were I guess in the army, but they were not assigned for any combat duty, and they were National Guard, and that became the nucleus for the 100th Battalion. Yeah, and they went on to McCoy, Mississippi, Wisconsin to take their training. Yeah.
Okay, and they preceded your group over to Europe, and like you mentioned before, they performed very very impressively. How did the 442 then come about?
Well, we trained together as a combat team. By combat, we had our battalion of field artillery. We had a company of engineers. Supposedly, our unit was a combat unit, combat team. And when we went overseas, we left back our 1st Battalion, which is companies A, B, C, D, and E Company was a heavy weapon. So they were absorbed into the other 3 battalions, and 100 became our 1st Battalion. Only when 100 went over, they also not necessarily had the A, B, C, D, but they also had provisionary companies, E and F, more or less, because at that time they were had to have their replacement and brought with them. Whereas by the time we got there, there were a lot of Nisei soldiers training for our replacement.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit maybe about a few specific missions that you participated in with the 442, and probably because, as we all know, the 442 wrote one of the greatest chapters in military history, and probably the most famous mission was the Lost Battalion. And were you a participant in that then?
I was participant to the degree that I Company was the first company to reach them.
You were in I Company?
I was in I Company, yes. And although here again, had we not reached him, probably K Company, which is fighting on the left side of us, would have reached him. But here was, as the story goes, there was 275 Texans, or 36th Division. They were a battalion at that time, and I believe that they were drawn into a trap by the Germans, and like pincers, as they drew in, they came behind and got armament behind them, so they were actually trapped. So people in Lost Battalion resent being called Lost Battalion because they feel that they were not lost. We knew where they were. It's just that you had to fight to them. Apparently, the story goes that they made several attempts to fight back, but here was German armament behind them, so they had received quite heavily casualties trying to fight out, that they given up that thought of escaping that way.
So they were totally surrounded,
Right.
but they were able to communicate by radio still?
Yes, we had Army had radio communication. It was a big. It wasn't like our cell phone today. You know, it was a big battery pack, about size of a lug box. You know, and that became communication for the company to their platoons and to their higher come-up commanders in the regiment.
So what were the attempts by the Army to rescue the Lost Battalion before you were successful in doing so?
Well, you had the unit trying to fight back to their parent unit, and you had a parent unit trying to send fighting, make contact that way. I hear that in both cases they gave it up because of the casualty. I don't know whether that was the case, but apparently it must have been, because why would they leave part of their soldiers up there had it not been the commanders who were trying to reach them say, hey, we lost 100 guys trying to get to them. Says, I think we should try some. Then about that time, I think 42nd was called upon to make that rescue.
So how were they successful? How were they able to accomplish this mission then?
I guess individually, where we may have succeeded where others, I think in our case, it was we were given a mission to rescue these Texas soldiers. Incidentally, they were all Caucasian soldiers. So we were given a mission to contact them and rescue them. And I don't think there's any question. We would probably continue to do so, but maybe it's a spirit, that charging spirit that caught German by not off guard, but they actually must have feared being run over by the Japanese Americans there.
Did you have heavy losses?
Yes, there was heavy losses. I think more so than the usual, but not to the extent that history book had written. Yeah.
Did you lose some personal friends then?
Oh yes. You always lose personal friends in combat. This is one reason why I accepted to speak today, and since maybe after 20 years after I came back, I was kind of felt that I needed to tell the people what they sacrificed in those. I don't say that it was a sacrifice of the men, is what they personally sacrificed, because I see myself coming back home, gone into a little bit of a business, married, family, but I think of those guys that had to be killed at their tender age of 20. You know, you look out there today and see guys in their 20, 22, under 25. You know, what if they had to be sacrificed for benefit for everybody, you know?
So, looking back on your wartime experience, and then we'll get to coming home briefly. And but what are your thoughts overall about that experience and about your comrades, your friends? Maybe what you feel you learned from and gained from that experience?
I don't know. You learn nothing from war. Just that I felt you created a comrade, whether they died or whether they lived. Eh, Because of this, it's just like the Yamashita reunion. We used to have reunions of our I Company reunion. Now it's getting to where those who are living today are scarce, so you can no longer have reunions. But if there was anything come of that, I think the comradeship you build up probably was everlasting.
Okay, now you get to come home. How long did you serve there overseas?
Well, we arrived there. I'm talking about Poe for a second now. We arrived there in May, and I got discharged in January of 46. May of 44, we arrived in Italy for our first combat. Now, it didn't seem that long a time, but yet it's a lifetime. Or I gotta relate. By the time we were told that we can go home, then we were able to do it on a point system. So naturally, the guys in Hawaii get credit for training over in Camp Shelby because it was overseas duty for them. You get so many points for overseas duty. Well, when my time to get discharged, said, well, you can either go home because there's a division ready to go home, or you can take a 5-day pass to Switzerland. Switzerland was the most cherished vacation land for us soldiers, you know. So, and here it was about October, you think about going home. The fighting was over in May, so about October you get a chance to go home. So, and they tell you that there's a division is going to send some guys home. So it's well, heck with Switzerland, I want to get home. So, guess where? New York, St. Louis was the biggest railroad station. I got to see it New Year's Eve, 1946, 45. So I had hoped to be home by Christmas. I missed it by 10 days, yeah. But let's give you a little experience of, little sideline, what I experienced.
Okay, well, welcome to the third session of the Yamashita family interviews. And tonight we will also welcome Mary Mary Yamashita Kurushima, and we welcome back Lily Yamaguchi Kurushima and Jimmy Kurushima. Hello. I think we all know who we are, so. We'd like to go back to the childhood days in Moapa Valley again, and we want some additional perspective from Mary because we missed you last evening, but we're going to even go back a little bit further to begin with. What can you tell us about, a little bit more about the move from, let's see, when and where you moved from California to Nevada and how that came to be? I'd also actually like to throw in getting from Japan to California, and I understand that went through Brazil and then a long trip up to California. So if you can give us some detail on that.
I know we moved from California to Nevada in 1925 because I was born there.
You were born in Moapa Valley?
Yeah, Moapa Valley.
Okay. You don't remember too much about life in California then, huh?
No, only the last 50 years.
So how did it come to pass that the family moved from California to Moapa Valley?
I think it's documented that the alien land law. Jim, can you help us on that?
Yes, I was 1 year old, so I should know.
Yeah, you remember
Yeah, I
very
remember
clearly, huh?
vividly.
Yeah.
We moved into the yellow house on the corner. But anyway, my grandparents were very successful on Irvine Ranch after coming up from Brazil or Gulf of Mexico, whichever story you want to accept.
Which one's the official story? I've
Well,
heard the Brazil one.
You read the Brazil one, which was passed on from, I would assume, my folks down to Masako. She wrote the Brazil on a donkey bit, whereas Kimie, the oldest sister, she probably got it directly from the horse's mouth. Not the donkey's mouth, but horse's mouth. And she states of coming into Gulf of Mexico, which is coming in through, I think there's no question, it all appears to be coming in from El Paso.
Well, it seems like, I don't know how many years ago when Kazuko came, she brought a letter that was from, and I have it at my house, that Kimia had written to us. And it was a letter, did you read that letter? Kimia said, and I like this story. She said that they walked, he and his friend, they got onto the ship because they wanted to go, they love the sea and they love the ocean and they love sailing and they love, and they saw this ship and so they went there and asked them if they could have a job. So they got onto this ship. This is her story.
And this is in Japan.
In
In
Japan, where they
okay.
lived.
Okay.
And so in her story, she said all the valley people, I mean, the people where they lived, I mean, were worried about them. What happened? They just disappeared, and nobody knew where they were. But they were working on the ship, and then they came somewhere to, I don't know where, Mexico somewhere, and the captain told them to walk this way, and you'll get to America. This is her story, and so they walked, I don't know how many days and whatever, and I like this story.
And it's true.
They saw a light. So by then they were very, very hungry and tired and whatever, so they went towards this light, and it was Mr. Irvine. And Mr. Irvine asked them if they would like to stay there. They gave him food. And
This is in California now.
in California, in Irvine. This is her story. I like this story. And they asked if, he said, if you would clear this land, we'll lease it to you. And that's how it started. And I like that story.
You don't know where they landed, though, once they got on the ship from,
I don't,
okay.
somewhere.
Okay. But did they not tell their family that we're
According
hopping on
to
a ship?
her, but then on the other hand, I analyzed it and I thought here was this 10 or 12-year girl, and the grandfather's telling her the story of how it happened. So it couldn't be fabricated, but that was her version of it. But I like it.
This is Kimia's.
Kimia's.
Okay.
It's a letter that was written to us.
Okay, and this is her grandfather or father that did this?
Her grandfather.
Grandfather. Okay.
And she read that story to our family.
And I have a copy of that story.
Okay. Well, great.
I like it, the story.
Okay, so now the family cleared the land and started farming there in California. Were they doing quite well then?
Very well.
So they did very well, but they were leasing the land.
Well, the grandfather was here and they cleared the land, and then they called for my mother and father, and then my mother and father came.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
So now they're in California.
Okay, and now the question that I have is if they're doing well and successful as farmers there in Southern California, why did they move to the rich, fertile Moapa Valley?
Wasn't that because of the alien
Alien
law?
land law, the California government passed what they call an alien land. It was known today as the alien land law. And any Asians, primarily Japanese, because Japanese is the one that's leasing the land, owning most of the land were still under lease, or even sharecropping would be prohibited from doing these things. So there was a promoter who came in, saw the opportunity to move at least half a dozen or so people to southern Nevada and talk the property up and say, we've got just a place for a beautiful Moapa Valley. Of course, they didn't describe it as Moapa Valley, but good fertile land, and this is why.
The man's name was Dan Livingston,
That's
and
right.
it was documented in one of Saki's books, right? Stories.
So the attraction is, it's a beautiful place. Was it advertised as fertile land as well? Or was the main attraction that you would be able to own your own land?
I feel in the letter, I go back to the letter, Kimia states that Mr. Irvine came to them and told them, we'll lease your land to you in secret. But my grandfather decided that he would go, no, he wouldn't do that. He would go back to Japan and take the oldest daughter and the oldest son with him. And that's when, I think, from what the letter says and from what I understand, is my parents had a choice. My father could work in Irvine for $5 a day, or he had this other option that came, and I think they chose to take the option of, because, and I respect that, because I think that's, you know, they knew that $5 a day is not going to go very far. And there was hope in the future. I think it was a question of hope,
Okay, and kind of be your own boss.
spirit of hope.
Yeah, okay. Okay. This Alien Act or whatever,
Alien land law.
land law, well, back in those days, foreign farmers, was it mainly Japanese? Did the Chinese not farm? So when the Chinese came, they did like the railroad and maybe mining, huh? And so mainly the farmers at that time, immigrant farmers, were Japanese then. Oh, okay.
I know my father indicated when he tells that story that there were about 50 families that came out, but only the two families remaining was our family and Ishimoto. You haven't heard that story?
I've heard that story, but
7.
remember we came in the disagreement before that it wasn't 50 families, maybe
7,
50 people. 50
Yeah,
people.
that would be quite a
Yeah.
few.
Remember you had that discussion.
Oh, you already talked about
No,
it.
no, you and he did.
So what year did the Yamashita family then go to Nevada?
1925.
1925.
1925. Wow, that's okay. During the war, when the war broke out, was there any change in the operation of the farm? You didn't have to give up the farm or anything like that you know of?
In Nevada?
Yes.
No, not in Nevada, no.
Okay. So the next question is, why and when did Shig and Kimie go back to Japan?
I don't know the exact year, but the story that I've heard in the letter she said is that when he decided to go back to Japan, when grandfather decided not to stay here, and he took the oldest son, which was Shigeru, and the oldest daughter back with him to live in Japan. Because I from my understanding, my parents and most Japanese didn't plan to live here forever. They were probably going to eventually move back to Japan. That's the way I understood it.
Okay. Now we know Kimie stayed. When did Shig come back?
Do you know what year he came back?
1938, I believe.
Okay. How old were they when they went back to Japan?
We have pictures. Let's see.
She
old were they?
was about 3-year-olds.
Maybe older, huh?
Well, the difference in Kimie and Shig were how many?
Oh, Saki was in between, but
Well,
I
that's
don't
the
know
other
how-
story. The Saki went back with them. So 3 of the children went back. And
haven't heard that
Saki
story.
came back with
With
later
Shig?
on, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, why did Shig and Saki come back?
Oh,
no, Saki came back.
yeah.
I didn't know she went.
Yeah, Shig came back after he finished high school. Yeah.
Yeah. Why did he just wanted to come back to
Well,
him?
actually, the whole family lived here.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
that would be, he's been wanting to come back, but they wanted to see them finish school, which he did. Then he came back to Nevada. I mean, yeah.
What I have heard from Cheryl, and I don't know if it's Sheik himself, is that he had a very hard life in Japan because Kimie was quite a few years older than him, 5 or 6, I don't know how many years, and the grandfather passed away. So they were basically orphaned over there. Kimie was older, so she wanted to continue to school. This is a story I've heard from, and he had a very difficult life because he was an orphan, and one relative he'd stay with one relative, and then after so many while they'd send him to another. So he just kept going from relative to relative, and he had a very, very difficult, unhappy life. And so his grandfather had always told him when he was young that if you ever wanted to go back to America, you can go back because you have dual citizenship. So his dream was always to come back, and I think Mother would want him to come back, but we were poor. They couldn't send for him. So according to Cheryl, after he got out of high school, he worked for a year in Kobe to earn enough money to come back. That's what she tells me.
Okay, so now he comes back. You all remember when he came back. He's almost a stranger, isn't he, by then? So how did he then fit in back into the family?
Well, he completed.
He went to Moapa
Go
Valley
ahead.
School, right?
Right,
Got his degree,
right.
and then he came back to California.
Then he also went to Los Angeles and lived with Saki. No? Well, at least lived with her until he got a job and got settled.
But how was he welcomed back into the family? I mean, you know, kind of being a stranger, and his English probably wasn't the best.
Well, you remember that there were 12 of us?
Right. So
I think I think he felt pretty much.
According
of
to
the family.
Cheryl, that was his daughter Cheryl, what she told me that he had a very difficult time adjusting to the family and adjusting to, this is what she tells me, so I don't know. But I don't remember.
you don't remember when he came back?
Very little.
Okay, you were quite
Yeah.
young then. Do
And-
you remember anything,
Oh
Jim?
yeah, he stayed with us very little because I think the Japanese high school were much higher grade credentials and stuff. So when the principal saw that, he gave him the Maipale High School diploma, and within a short time, he was a graduate of Maipale High School. Of course, his English was not too proficient. That's why he went to L.A., Polytechnic for sure, and that's where they specialize in people from foreign country to learn English, you know.
Okay. How did he interact with the rest of the kids?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Okay.
Well, I bring this up because he spent very little time with us. I think I can't remember if he even spent a whole year with us. Because once he enrolled in high school, and in as much as he received his high school diploma, then he himself and the parents felt that he could polish up on his English, which he went to California, where the Japanese population were,
And he was a fast runner. He was in Moapa Valley. I remember that he was a fast runner, and we always used to go watch him.
Okay, so now the family moves to Moapa Valley. Tell us about the very first farmhouse. Where was that, and who built the house?
You probably have a better vision than I do. All I remember is a long barrack. I don't remember much anything else, so I don't know.
I don't remember the house being built, but I know that it was brought from California by truck or something. I don't know how they got it here, but it was
By train.
disassembled and brought to that land on the corner. Ivan's Ranch, was it?
Murphy.
Murphy?
I called it Murphy.
And
It was Scott Ranch. Murphy moved there after we did.
Okay. I remember Murphy.
So this was a nice mansion. What
Well-
was it like?
Barrack.
Barrack?
What it was a 1 by 12. Everybody knows what a 1 by 12 is.
Well, the younger generation
You-
probably won't.
1 inch thick,
Oh,
12
I
inch
gotcha.
wide, with a slat. That was our fabrication of the house itself. I think it was disassembled, probably tore down a barn. But to go back, Dad was an apprentice carpenter, so he was able to sight his way through. I questioned because of the last house he put together was supposed to be L-shaped, but it was kind of half-angled L. Well, anyway, we had a barn and we had this long house, almost as long as this steakhouse. But it was a long house, shake roof, and not shake, it was just a shingle roof. See, shake makes you say it belongs only on rich houses. But anyway, here was a shingle roof made up construction of 2x4s, and the walls were 1 by 12s with a 3-inch slat vertically just keep the air from whistling through.
Okay, so having come from Japan and Southern California, now you're in Nevada, and I'm sure it was just as hot in those days as it is today. How did you deal with the heat back then? No air conditioning, probably.
Were there any air conditioning back in
Yeah,
25?
yeah.
You don't remember, do you?
I think we had coolers or.
Fans.
I remember we used to always.
cooler was out in the shed.
Yeah, we had to
And it was
Like a
covered with
swamp
gunny
cooler?
sack.
yeah, and they put water on.
Yeah,
Then,
those are swamp coolers.
then
Yeah.
we had a tub on top where the water dripped down,
yeah.
and kept it cold enough to preserve.
Cool the air. Yeah. Okay.
Then we used to sleep outside a lot too.
Oh, okay.
And then I remember on the farm, didn't we always have a siesta? The hottest part of the day, they didn't work, right?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Cantaloupes had to be picked, whether
I
it
thought we
be.
had a siesta, maybe I was
Yeah,
only
we had to.
maybe I was only taking.
Yeah. So we worked right through the summer.
I think everybody took a siesta though, took a rest, a long rest, and then we go out and work and till we couldn't see anymore.
But you recall that your dad did much of the reconstruction of the house then?
Yes.
Okay. So the sons helped? Or neighbors?
I don't recall he did
In
any help.
those days, didn't we used to have Indian families live?
No, but did they help? I don't know.
Okay. So how were you welcomed into the neighborhood, into the valley? You're probably not going to remember, but
wasn't born.
do you remember how these new two or seven Japanese families were welcomed to the valley?
I don't recall any welcome banners out or no
There wasn't a
Japs
band,
wanted or anything
band
like
wasn't
that.
playing.
But as far as our neighbors, after we got started, were very welcoming
okay.
us.
Murphy's Swaps lived in the corner, and didn't Murphy's live across the street? No?
No, Murphy moved in after we, in
I know
fact,
there are
after we
neighbors, but
moved
I don't-
out. After we lost the farm, Murphy's moved in.
Moved in after us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, lost the farm. What do you mean by that?
Well, when we moved to Nevada, we were promised fertile land and stuff like that, but they didn't tell you you're going to spend 5 years getting into shape to grow crops. So in the interim,
To prepare the land?
Yeah.
Okay.
in the interim, your funds start driving out, and your kids start coming along, require more expenses. Besides, they're very useless when they're little tots like that. But I think hard times, when you get into the late 20s, it was poor people all over the place. So it wasn't surprising that these fellows that or families that moved out, of the 50 families, only 7 survived. Then later on, when the war started, only 2 families were. When war started, World War II started, there was only 2 families that were living there. But I can't tell you what. I don't recall them talking about poor time, or they're running out of money, or anything like that.
But you say you lost the farm for a while?
Yes.
How, because of the tough times.
Tough times.
So then what did you do?
Well, there was another farm up the road that we were able to purchase and make.
That's where we grew up.
In Kapalapa.
Yeah,
Kapalapa, yeah.
yeah. It's right in between Logandale and Overton.
Okay.
And that's where most of the remembrance we've had was raised on that particular farm.
So the long barrack house, you left that house?
No, it was.
They cut it in half and moved it to the other house.
Really?
Isn't it?
Yeah,
I think they cut it in half and they
And-
moved it to
and
the other
moved it.
farm in L shape like this. One here, one there, and then my father built this here.
Elaine lived in it.
Yeah, is this the house she almost burned down one day?
Oh, Christmas.
She said she was you're not supposed to play with matches or something to that effect.
I don't remember that.
But she did and had a little fire and it was put out, but
I don't remember
We
that.
didn't hear about that.
I haven't heard that one.
now something new you learn.
Must have scared her.
See, I think a father was a carpenter. The reason he was a carpenter, I think is important, is because he was a twin, and in Japan it was a bad omen. So then he had to work. He was cast out of the family, so he worked as an apprentice for. Isn't that the story? And that's how he became a carpenter.
Okay. So now with the new farm, okay, had it kind of start all over again, or?
Pretty much, it was raw mesquite land, mesquite land, and
That
we had to grow.
was the white alkali, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. We had total Well, first we bought 40 acres. Then we had a chance to buy 20 more acres. We had total 60 acres, of which half of it was alkali land and not farmable.
Did you ever
There,
get it going? The
yes,
alkali land?
what they did, I think Map Valley put a deep drainage river ditch, should I say, at the end of the property, which drained all that salt water away.
Okay.
So all the bad alkali went,
Surface down.
yeah.
Okay, last night, Mary, we talked about the different kids' responsibilities, and Lily shared with us a little bit about Bookie's role in the family. What was your remembrance of Bookie's role and responsibility in the family?
I know she was the best cook that ever came by that house. Yeah, she was a cook, and I thought about her quite often. She's gone now, so I don't get a chance to taste her. But we used to go visit her, and she can cook, and she doesn't need a recipe. And in fact, I would say that she devised or prepared food using her imagination, or Japanese food, because we didn't have a cookbook in those days. Now we have a cookbook. I tell everyone, check it out in the cookbook.
So she kind of had a gift for
Yeah.
preparing food. Okay.
I thought so. Not that I didn't want to cook, but she was a chosen cook.
And she kind of helped organize things then among the siblings.
She gave us orders
Yeah.
to set the table. We did whatever she asked us to, didn't we?
Yeah, I was her gopher. I didn't know that. I used to go for everything.
Yeah, and
She was the mama.
And I always waited for her to tell us what to do, because she had in her mind how to do it.
So she was very organized.
I would say that she was very good in getting us to help her.
And this was kind of her role because Mom was in the field working, I guess, huh?
We were in the fields too. When
Yeah.
we came home, we helped her, so she had to be organized to do that. She was able to tell us what to do and what kind of dishes we need, and we would do it.
Okay.
Well, I don't remember. I remember I did it. I don't know.
I was a good girl. She always told me I was a good girl. I grew up thinking I was a good girl because she told me I was a good girl.
Okay. Do you remember when Roma passed away?
Roma was about 9 months,
6 months. 6.
6 months.
6 months.
I remember.
Okay.
I remember we were out in the field, and she was in a kind of a bassinet, and I think she was probably ill at that time. But you know, my mother, whether she senses she's ill or not, but anyway, they continue working, and she progressively got worse. Nothing, pneumonia,
Whooping cough.
whooping cough.
Whooping cough, yes. And I know that they had her overnight at the house before the burial, I guess. And I remember, to this day, I remember distinctly going in there to try to find out what happened to her. You know, at that age, well, I must have been
I was 4.
You were 4?
So you must have been 8.
Then I was 8 or 9. That's how we figure our ages.
So was that quite a kind of a shock to you then, being so young and gee, our little
Oh,
baby
yes,
sisters?
yes, she wasn't there anymore, and I know we buried her. I don't remember going, but I know we have a grave up in the Overton Hills.
So one of the grandkids asked, do you remember having her on the sewing machine?
Remember what?
Do you remember having her on the sewing machine?
Having the baby on the sewing machine?
And I have no idea what that means.
Well, you said you remember seeing Roma on the sewing machine.
Oh, our sewing machine is a cabinet.
I know, but you said you remember seeing her on the sewing
Oh,
machine.
yeah, I remember seeing.
I don't remember that.
Okay. What did you have family outings?
Every day, out in the
Out
field.
out in the field.
Out in the field.
My mother was good at telling time. She could go, I know Missy and I used to go help, because she's helping Bookie cook. But we would begin to get fidgety when we were getting hungry. And so I said, I think it's time to go hanyo, you know. But my mother would go out in the field, in the row, and she had a hoe, and we would tell our time from that. She was accurate.
So if the hole was up, that meant it's
you know,
time
like
to
a stick,
go eat.
12 o'clock.
Wow.
Like hoe was like a stick.
Yeah. Okay. But did I know times were very tough in those days? But did you go out and do anything as a family? Go to a movie, go on a picnic, anything like that?
You're dreaming.
We went to Las Vegas. I remember we were able to go with Dad. And why do I remember? Did we have a Studebaker?
We had a Studebaker.
And he would take us, and then we get to a certain point, there would be a big, we'd have to get off the car to cross. Well, I guess that's probably when it rained. But anyway, that's an outing.
We used to go to Vegas once in a while, I remember that. But to do our shopping, buy clothes, and then we'd go visit family friends, but
But no Disneyland and things like that.
no movies.
No, you didn't go to very many movies then growing
Not
up.
as a family.
Okay. Did you have radio at home?
We didn't have electricity until when?
Wow.
It's about 1938.
Right before the war.
When did Joe Louis win his first match? We used to go down to Neighbors and listen to it.
Okay. So no electricity. Plumbing? You had plumbing.
Not indoor.
We'd have to
Pump water.
pump our own
water.
water
Okay.
or
And
get
we
it
had
from
an
the ditch,
outhouse.
outhouse, so we didn't need plumbing.
Puro.
Okay, ofuro. Cooking, wood stove or coal burning stove?
Coal and wood.
Coal and
In the beginning, later on we had gas.
gas. Oh,
Yeah, the portable gas. What is
Oh, butane.
butane?
oh, butane.
That
Yeah.
was in much later.
Much later, but it was before us.
Yeah, I don't recall any coal down there. Mostly.
We used to have coals. Remember we had that wood stove and we put wood in there or coal in there and sit around and keep warm?
Then we'd make marshmallows. Well, I
There's your
remember
picnic.
marshmallows.
Yeah, there's their picnic. So you
On the
got to
coals.
school on a school bus or? Okay. Okay.
The bus would, farm, our house was in a little bit, so we'd have to go out by the road and stand out there, and the bus would pick us up.
Okay. Did you learn how to swim back those days?
I don't swim.
You still don't swim. Did they have a swimming pool in Overton?
Later
any-
on, they had public pool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was
So if you did, it was like going down to the river or something.
Yeah.
I think people learned to swim at the lake or something, but we didn't go to the lake.
we used to go play in the water in the ditch.
I don't think any of us knew how to swim.
That's right. We didn't swim, but the water only came to our waist.
Okay, so here's some additional questions. Who was the most serious in the family?
You're asking us?
I could tell
And
you.
see, you don't have, the others can't speak for themselves, so.
I'm trying to think who was them.
I think Keel was.
Keel? Oh, really?
Keel.
I think
Wow.
he was the
would
most.
vote for Keel too.
He was the most intense and
Yeah.
most serious, and from what I understand, and from he was very, very bright. Well,
Yeah.
of course, I was much younger, but that's what I've read and what I heard. But he was most intense, and for me, I remember he had a temper. And I remember Jim used to run away, huh?
Yeah.
You remember? My mom would have to go look for him.
I
My
used to
dad
go
would
and
get
hide.
mad. Why would you hide? I forgot why he would hide, but I know.
I didn't want to get pinned down by him.
Because he was guilty.
He was guilty. I just remember that he used to run
So
through
in
the
those days, was he bigger than you then? Older, but was he bigger than you then?
He had a bigger mouth.
Yeah.
That got him into trouble.
Okay, so Keo was the most serious. Who was the most carefree?
I don't know the younger ones, so.
probably George. No, I don't know.
I could see George being the carefree one in the family.
I was carefree. I never worried about anything, but I don't know if
Who was the funniest?
sunniest.
Funniest.
Oh, funniest.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the
What you call funny.
where you place in the family.
Well,
I thought Jimmy was my elder by one and a
He
half.
said he was popular, so maybe he was
Yeah.
funny too.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
no, the funniest being, the guy
They,
that.
everybody thought he was funny, so I did too.
No. I guess I look at funny as the one that would play
Mischievous.
practical jokes,
jokes.
like to joke around, big sense of humor.
Tell stories.
Yeah.
I don't know. Didn't-
Okay. Who was the most rebellious?
Me.
I think Saki.
Okay.
Something.
I mean, just from what has happened, I think Saki.
I think
She was her own person.
Ah.
The reason I told Annie, she's not here. I said I have to be careful what I say, but I told her that we can cut it out. But in my idea is that she probably was the most rebellious because, and also that's an asset. She was a very independent person. She was her own person because in my view, when you have 8 kids, 7, 8 kids, she's the oldest, my mother's depending on her, why would she leave the family and go work somewhere else? And leave my sister Bookie in charge, who was much younger. So I would have, and then I know when she left high school, she went to California. She didn't feel the need to stay on the farm and help like Bookie and Keel did, So in my estimation, I told Annie I might say something bad, so, but it's not bad. To me, it's not bad. I
Sure.
think it says what a independent person. She was her own person. And in lots of ways, that's very admirable. But I would say she was
sure.
rebellious.
Yeah. Would you say that that each of the children were quite unique in their own way, or were the children kind of the same, homogeneous?
Each one had their own assets and faults and what have you.
How about personality-wise? Who's the most shy?
Most what?
Most
Shy.
shy.
Shy
It wasn't you.
at one time.
I don't know, maybe I was.
You were shy? I don't know. Everybody evaluates themselves. And in a certain period of time in your life, you're shy,
Sure.
I know when I was little, I was shy because I remember going everywhere with my sisters, and I never said a word because I didn't have to.
They said
But that
for you.
No, she says it all.
But that's not being shy. It's just taking your place, being obedient.
Sure.
Don't get harder ones.
Well, part of the being obedient, I guess, having grown up with my parents, both grew up in Japan, and I grew up, I thought, very obedient. I just never had an inclination to be rebellious or to kind of kick against the pricks type of thing. But I always attributed that to, the Japanese way, so to speak. Did you feel that as well? That in Japan, there's an expectation that you respect the elders, you work hard, you don't do anything to embarrass or tarnish the family name. So was that feeling there also in?
Oh, yes, I think so.
I don't think we ever have. I don't remember any of us in the family fighting against each other. I would never talk back to my parents or anybody. We just didn't do that. We just did what we're supposed to do.
Okay. What did, another question on the list here is, what did Mitzi do for fun?
Mitzi do for what?
Fun.
Fun.
Fun? Mitzi do for fun.
She probably did what we all did, play with handmade toys. And
Play dolls.
I know that we used to play paper dolls by cutting out our Sears Roebuck. No, it was in those days, it was Montgomery Ward.
Mine was Sears
And
Roebuck.
we dress them and
Okay.
make clothes.
I think she did what we all did, the usual things. One thing about Mitzi, because she was closest in age to me, and of course I always looked up to her, but she was extremely talented, and as a more older person, I think her artistic ability and her creative ability probably was very, I guess it's fun.
Okay.
And she used it in many ways, I think, every day of her life.
She was very creative. And I remember she used to, later years, she used to decorate for weddings and all that kind of stuff. So she was, I think, the most creative in the family. I don't know if you call that fun, but.
What did the boys do creatively?
Fight.
You just said we don't fight each other. So.
Oh, that's
No,
that's not creative.
I think everything was agricultural oriented. I think
Yeah.
And I remember Keel went to Kansas City as a livestock judging in FFA, very strong in FFA. And I don't know if you call that creative, but it's still it's part of work on the farm and being creative by getting educated to where he was more prolific in what he does, you know.
So he was the serious one. What did he do for fun growing up?
What did I do?
No, Keel.
Oh, Keel?
Yeah, so he's the serious one, but did he have a fun side, lighter side to him too?
Did we say we having fun?
I don't know. He was so much older than me. I don't know if he's having fun.
No, I can't help you there. Yeah, I don't know what he did for fun.
I don't think we thought about fun in our days.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't think nowadays people think, am I having fun?
Yeah.
But I don't think we ever thought, am I having fun? We just did what he did.
You just worried about whether you're going to have enough time to do all your homework.
Probably one of the least familiar sibling to a lot of us. Well, Kimiya, because she was in Japan. But Roy, I remember when I became part of the Yamashita family, you know, I really didn't get to meet Roy for a while, and then in the later years, I've met him and have been able to talk to him. What are your reflections on Roy that you could pass on to the younger generation that didn't get to know him?
Roy was my younger brother, just below me, and I think I was very close to Roy because in a big family, you're usually close to the one above you, Mitzi and Roy. And my vision of Roy has to be that he's got to be the kindest person ever existed. And he was always so willing to help everybody. And I remember when the brothers all were in service, he was only 12 or 13 or 14. He used to do all the man work, you know, drive the tractor, do all the work while the guys were gone. And we used to have to get water, drinking water, and when he would be responsible to get that, and he would not only get our water, but people who have moved into the valley, like the Miyoshis and the Ozakis, and he'd all go to everybody and ask them if they want water and get water for him, for them also. So he was very, too bad you didn't know him. He was a very caring person, very, very caring person. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Mary?
And I remember him as always his last words are, do you need anything? Can I get anything? He wanted to do something. And I don't remember having a list for him, but I knew I could always depend on him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jimmy, you're a lot older brother, so...
Yeah, I think in the days that he was taking responsibility, like Lil said, I was away, so I can't speak for what I would have done or what my opinion on him, so I abstain from saying anything about him.
Okay. And the baby, George.
Oh, baby George. What was the question?
Well, what are your impressions, or what can you tell us about George being the youngest of the family? Do you feel like he was spoiled a little bit? Did everybody pick on him?
I think every bit of that. But I loved him very much. He's about 10 years. Is he 12
11.
years?
He's 7 years younger than me. He's 11 years younger than me.
Okay. Yes. So I still keep up with him very closely. Yeah.
So when
Well,
I think he was
remember
dear
when
to all of
When
us.
he was born, I think that we used to have what was he? George. We always tease him and
Strasser?
say,
Oh, the tramp.
yeah.
Oh, Strasser.
George
A
Strasser.
very gentle person, and he took care of George quite a bit when we all went out in the field, so he'd stay close by and watch him.
So did you all take turns giving him a bath and changing his diaper and all of that?
Oh, definitely.
I didn't. I don't remember. I mean, we two. I know George was George. He's our.
I think we all looked for him to get a good education because
Yeah,
none of us in the family really
Yeah, I think that's.
beyond high school. Some went a little further, but to really get into the education, and he took. I think he did the most.
Yeah.
I believe with his education, as you know, he was on the Apollo program. He was at the Aeronautics later on. I give him credit for everything he's done.
So growing up, was he kind of groomed to go to college, or was it kind of in his mind that, you know, I'm going to...
Well, he was, as I said last night, I was fortunate. I got to go to college because I had a sister that guided me in. Mitzi paid for me. George, I guess, being 7 years younger, probably just sort of expected. And I think my mother, I think I told the story about, you know, she must have been expecting. So I think he just expected to go. And I do remember when he came to California, he was going to go to UCLA. I remember I was already married then, but I remember he was a skinny kid. You'd never believe it, but he was a skinny kid. And Ted and I took him out to UCLA, and he looked at the place. And now he tells us it kind of scared him, so he went to LA City College. But I think he was smart. He knew he was going to go, and he was able to go.
Were you the first to go to college then?
Yeah, I was first.
Okay.
Because everybody else was older, and they had to work.
Yeah.
I was lucky, not because I didn't have to help the family, but everybody else had to help the family. So
Okay. So you went to college, George went. Is that it then?
I guess.
For the siblings,
go?
right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that to this day, George thanks me for whatever I did when he was going to college. I think it might have been what you said, that he was groomed to go, but maybe he's not. But I think he has a great appreciation for college and upper.
And I want to add, and I want this in the records, okay?
Okay.
That I always tell him the smartest thing he ever did was to marry Carol. She's got to be the best. I want that in the records.
Okay. Now, this is kind of a question coming from me, just out of curiosity. How did you meet your spouses? And if you can remember, how did all of the other siblings meet their spouse? We'll start with you, Mary. How did you and Eddie get together?
I don't mind sharing this because I do remember that after the war, we all had our education we wanted to fulfill. So we ended up, I ended up in Los Angeles, and my friend was next door. In those days, we called it not babysitter, schoolgirl. We get a job in a mansion and clean it and take care of it, and they give you a room. I learned to cook. I learned so much from her. But anyway, one day, my friend next door, 3 mansions away, called me and said, "Will you want to come over for a party?" I think she had a boss that was very generous and let her have parties and etc. So I went over there, and who do I see? Eddie. He's
The best looking guy in the whole world.
yeah, best looking guy. And he was standing in the doorway, so smug, you know. But I didn't forget him. So when he called to and say that we want to have a party, will I go? I certainly went. That's it.
So that's
the
how
end of
you
the
met,
story.
and the rest is history.
Rest is
How
history.
long after did you get married?
Don't look at us.
I got married in 1950. I met him right after the war, so maybe about.
So in those days, did you date a lot, or you just kind of got together and did you go on formal dates with Eddie?
Oh, all the time. Well, you mean I was working in the home. He was working as a chauffeur. So when he got that Cadillac, she was very generous. She let him use it when she wasn't using it. So come pick me up and go for.
Swept you off your feet in a Cadillac, huh? Okay. So how did you and Ted get to?
Let's see. His sister, my girlfriend, I belong to a girls' club. My girlfriend said one day, "Do you want to go to a party? My cousin is giving this little get-together, a few guys." And so there were about 3 of us that went, 4 of us. And he was there because it was his brother and his sister-in-law and a couple of his friends. That's how we met.
Okay, was it love at first sight?
Of
or?
course.
It really was, huh?
Well, there was no one that, I don't know if it was love at first sight, but we clicked.
It clicked real early then, right? Okay.
And then
So then
he came over, and then we started going out. About a year.
About a year, okay. Okay.
But I was getting old, too. I was already 24. And that days I was old. Everybody gave up on me.
Okay, Jimmy, how did you
I
and
think
Marion?
Marion's family and my family were old family friends from back in Irvine.
The
so-
farming days,
Yeah,
okay.
so that I don't have to say anymore.
So did the families kind of get you together
Yes,
then?
Yes, we after the service I was able to be introduced to her.
You didn't know her before then?
I don't recall. No.
Okay.
No.
Mom,
So was that a long courtship?
I would say so.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what can you remember any others?
Paul and Mitzi.
Okay, how did Paul and Mitzi get together?
Oh, Paul moved out, and I forgot. Mitzi was already teaching school
At the high s-
at the, because
in
it's,
Moapa Valley.
and they got together. It was shortly after they moved out. They became good friends, and they got married fairly young. I think they were well suited. They just clicked.
How about George and Carol?
From what I understand, Carol is working at the farmer. Her parents, isn't that right? Her parents own the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And George was going to school at, and so she worked at their Chinese restaurant.
Well,
At the farmer's market, was it a restaurant?
yeah, she didn't own farmers markets.
No, she didn't own. She owned a booth in farmer's
Yeah,
market.
that's-
I'm
that's
sorry. Of course, she doesn't own farmer's market. Who does? And he worked. At least that's what they say. He was going to City College, and he had a part-time job cleaning up. And so he says that she really liked his old farm ways, you know. He at least from his point of view, she was really attracted to him.
So who asked who out for the first date?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't there, but
Okay. Okay.
I think he used to provide rides for her to go home, or
I don't know too much about their. But that's what they said. They met
How about Bookie and Tom?
during the war. The Izakis moved to
Logandale.
Overton, to Logandale to farm. The Izakis,
Yeah, really?
yeah, relocated there.
Oh, okay.
And they were farming there, weren't they? And then he was there with his parents and his brother George, right? Tom. And then, according to her story and what is that, you know, then they started dating, and then they moved back. Tom moved back to San Jose, and Bookie was here, but they were corresponding. And I guess he asked her to come out there, and his mom agreed, and they got married. Is that?
he agrees.
He looks like he agrees. That's what she tells me.
No, that was right. Because
Well-
the story that I heard from him, I'm sorry to jump in, but the story I heard from him is he met Keo first, and then came out, and then I guess the first person he met in the family was my grandma. So, and that's how they got started.
Yeah,
And I think he said,
I
like,
remember your grandpa used to come over to our house.
Yeah, he said he used to like take her up to Las Vegas to go watch movies. So there's your fun right there.
Okay. How about Keo and Mary?
Higashiyamas. From what I understand, we had a family friend, the Higashiyamas,
Oh, that's it.
and they introduced him. That's
Oh,
all I
okay.
know.
Okay. Roy?
Roy, when Mary must have had Elaine, I guess, the first baby. When Mary had Elaine, first baby, then Imogene was her sister. No, her niece. Imogene is Mary's niece, right? And so Imogene, yeah, her oldest daughter, right? And Imogene came down to help take care of Mary on the farm. I was already in college, but that's what I understand. And then they met and they got married.
Okay.
Maybe it was Elaine. He took care of her.
Who
So
am I?
Elaine was the cause.
Do you know how Shig and his wife got together?
They had a mutual friend. Who was their name? And Watts.
Yeah,
Miyoshi?
they had a mutual friend.
Was it
that
Miyoshi?
Oh,
introduced him.
Miyoshi's.
Miyoshi.
Miyoshi's.
Miyoshi, yeah, could be.
They had a friend that introduced them.
Okay. Saki?
Saki's married twice, you know.
Right.
Well, from what I understand, when Saki got out of high school, she was her own person, like I said. So she went to move to California, and her first, Georgianne's father, was George Yamashita, the minister's son, and she got married to him.
Okay.
Very prominent family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have I left anybody
Ministry.
out? Who did I leave out?
No, you covered them all.
You're pretty good.
Got it?
Yeah, you are pretty good.
Okay. Well, one last question. Just anything you want to add about your growing up days in Moapa Valley? That you would like your posterity to know about?
If I had to choose a place to grow up, I think I would choose Moapa Valley. It was a very comfortable, carefree way to grow up in a happy time.
Okay. Mary?
I remember that I wanted to add the fact that we used to go as a group to the Overton Theater. And I didn't get to do it all the time. I don't know why, but I went whenever my girlfriends asked me. We would start from the town and pick up walking, because we didn't have such vehicles like they do today. And we would pick them up. Then we go see the movie. And I guess that would be like group fun. I did that for a period there. I don't know why we stopped doing it. I guess they got their cars and etc. But that was fun. When I look back to Moapa Valley, I think of those days when we didn't sneak out. It was authorized.
Okay.
But it was fun.
Okay.
Get away from farm work and etc. for a couple of nights.
Jimmy?
I came into a lot of people that have experienced prejudice on the West Coast. So I got to think that the Mormon religion, what these kids were taught in their home, made it so easy for us to be a part of their family too.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure family members or somebody will think of more questions sometime, but you're done tonight.
You're pretty good.
Any other questions?
I do. I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I raised my hand. Okay, I'm good. I'm clear. So we were talking about how my grandpa and my grandma met, right? And so she hadn't have been more than like 21 years old at the time. No, I'm like, okay. So I from what I understand, she moved away pretty fast out to California. So what kind of happened to the family? Because she was such a backbone of it as far as cooking and organizing everybody. I mean, what happened to all the other siblings after?
Oh, because she was, like you said, she was the mama of the family. Well, we were all kind of grown up by then, you know, and we didn't fall apart. I mean, she kept us together, but we did okay with, you know, because she was already, what, 20, I forgot how old she was when she got married.
Maybe about 21. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my
22,
head.
23, I forgot. I remember when she got married and when she left. And there was a big void, but she had a bigger mission to do.
Oh, well, I was just curious who did all the cooking then, and
What?
who did all the cooking then at that point? Because I mean, how many were left after she had?
Oh, after she left?
Yeah.
When was that? 1940?
I don't know if you're looking at me for the
Let's
answer.
see. She get married. 40.
November. I just
40
remember that it was.
Keel was in 48, 77. She was before then. I don't know.
I kind of remember 45 being a number that stood
Yeah,
out to me.
could be, but we were all, except for George.
Right.
Yeah, we were all kind of grown up by then.
Thank you. No.
Okay,
Okay.
is that a wrap?